Hi, I'm Samantha Anderson, Director of Communications for Newton Public Schools, and I'm here with Superintendent Van Rankin, and we're here to go over last night's board meeting, as well as just any other questions you may have. It may be related to the board meeting, or it may not be. So feel free to leave any questions you may have in the comments section, and I'll be checking them. We actually have this live streamed on all of our different pages. So I'll go to the other pages throughout and try to make sure there's no question on any of those pages as well. So first things first, Mr. Van Rankin, the board did approve some COVID-related items like the gating criteria and athletics. Will you just let us know what their decisions were?
Well, we're going to come back for the first 2 weeks after the Christmas break in what would be our yellow mode, which means essentially we're going to be in hybrid at the secondary level, 7 through 12. And we're going to be on site, pre-K through 6. Pre-K is always on site. So the numbers indicated like we're really close to being in that yellow marker. And if you look at like the trend was the one that was a little bit controversial, a little bit, it really isn't. That's where you just have to make a decision. It was almost a coin toss. When you look at the state numbers, if you look at trend, there are 4 categories of colors, but when you're with the trend, you're either going up, you're going down, or you're stable. And there's 2 color ranges within stable. And you could have interpreted that either way that you wanted to. And it really was close enough for it to be a coin flip. But the board made the decision to go with yellow in terms of that category. Percent positive, we're still orange, but man, we're like at 10.04%. I should be looking at those numbers instead of just, 10.04%. From the state's data, which at 10% is that cutoff to be in yellow. So, and then with our attendance, when we look at the averaging the staff and the student attendance, we're in yellow. So, so we got 2 oranges, or pardon me, 2 yellows and an orange, or you could have said 2 oranges and a yellow, because that would have been kind of a coin flip. So once again, we wanted to be able to provide some certainty for staff and for parents after the break. If you listen to the board meeting, there was much discussion about what we should do. And that's part of the hard sausage making piece of this, is that, like I've tried to say all along, there aren't conversations taking place outside. And if you watch some of these board meetings, you get that, you develop that understanding. That's when they actually go through the thought processes associated with making that decision. So we wanted to give you all that certainty. But if something were to go south on us in terms of numbers, if our percent positive, like on the 28th of December, was a 20%, went way above the 15. We won't have staff data, but we'll have staff and student attendance data only for this week. And so we would just use that information for that piece of the determination. But if our trend and our percent positive went up, we would have a special board meeting called, and they would make a different determination. That goes back to over Christmas break, to ensure that we keep the trend downward in terms of numbers in that positive direction. Please wear your mask, social distance, practice good hygiene. We want to have our kids back on campus. I've had the opportunity to have a couple of different discussions with different groups over the course of the last 4 or 5 days. And we want our kids back on campus. Our kids want to be back on campus. So we need everyone to do their part as it relates to that. This isn't a political message. This is a I want my kid in school message. It really, really is. So this is all about this. Let's hang on for a while, another few months, get that vaccine rolling out, and start developing that herd immunity with that vaccine. And we can have some semblance of normalcy sooner rather than later. But we really need to get through this holiday break with everyone. Please taking to heart those 3 things in terms of practices. What did I leave out there? So, Keisha, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, the High School Activities Association Board of Directors met last week. If you would remember, a couple of weeks ago, they met and they determined there would be no spectators for any of the Keisha-sponsored events until the 28th of January. They met again last week. If I was able to listen to a little bit of that board of directors meeting, and what they essentially are going to allow is two participants per, or two spectators or parents, pardon me, per participant to attend events. Now, so they're talking just parents, okay? They're talking just parents or guardians. So they're not talking like, okay, tomorrow I'm the grandpa, but tomorrow I'm going to be the guardian. That's not the way that regulation works out. So they're talking just two parents specifically. And they've got some guidance. I think Sam might have put some of that out, I believe. So you can, I don't have all those things memorized, but it's interesting. Whenever you have stuff like that, people think of ways to game the system. All right. So I'm going to get a press pass, for example, and take pictures for the paper, even though I'm not a photographer or whatever. So what they've really done a good job of doing is trying to figure out what are all of the categories that we really need to define. And one clarification they came out with yesterday afternoon was to include, if you have an infant child as a parent, the infant child can go, but none of the other siblings. Okay, so, and also there's clarifications, things like, let's say I've got 3 kids, it's a basketball night, I've got a girl, I've got 2 boys, one's a JV player, one's a varsity. That doesn't mean you get 6 tickets. That means the parents can go to those sets of games. So they've done a good job of trying to clarify that. One thing that we made sure to include was that during those designations, and that was up through our orange designation. So the only time we wouldn't have fans is in red. Well, if we're in red from the activity perspective, we're not doing anything other than virtual anyway. So we're going to allow those as long as the venue can handle it. And what we mean by that is, like, if we're hosting a swimming meet, we may not be able to allow 2 parents per participant because there's not space in the swimming pool area for that to happen from that perspective. So the Tournament of Champions wrestling tournament may be another one of those where that'll be limited perhaps to 1, based upon the number of teams there and capacity. So that was a lot of stuff that we talked about last night at the board meeting. And it would also apply to not just CASHA sponsored stuff, but if there's a concert, things of that nature, like we just had the play a couple of weeks ago, we would have allowed those kinds of things, that would have included those kinds of things as well. I think that kind of covers that, Sam. Maybe.
Yeah. And then one thing I'm actually very excited about, and I know a lot of you like to watch our board meetings on Facebook the night that they happen, and then maybe watch this too. The board approved an audio visual system for the boardroom. Can you give us a little information on that?
Well, Sam, you're the one that should give the information. You did most of the work on that, you and Dr. Decker. So, I mean, it was something that was in the works. So why don't you tell them, Sam?
Okay. Without getting too technical, basically we'll have new microphones that will be able to do a better job of streaming to our feed. So instead of using the audio in the room and the amplification in the room, it'll go directly to our Facebook, which will be great. And we'll have new cameras. We'll be able to switch between shots, so you won't see my slow pan that you get to see sometimes. We are actually using the OWL for now. Mr. Smith at the high school let us borrow it, and it is working great, so I do appreciate that. But we were able to use CARES funding for that, and the microphones haven't been updated since I've been here, so I think it was about time for that. So we're really excited. Now it is COVID and it is the holidays, and everybody wants an AV system because it's just the sign of the times. So it may take a while to actually get it in there, but we will make sure it happens as soon as possible. So we're very excited. Dr. Decker helped out a ton on this, and I appreciate it. And it is actually more complicated than you think, just because of the numbers of speakers and how spread out they are. So yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you for letting us do this.
And that's another one of the things. It was actually technically Sparks dollars, not CARES dollars. There's 2 sources of federal funds that we've received, and that's not a big deal. But we had to use up the Sparks dollars by the 31st of December. Really, it's because it's all being funneled through Harvey County. So we had to have that all completed by that time. And that was another thing that the board approved last night that was partially through a large part through Sparks dollars, was a one-time $150 we can't call it a bonus. We can't call it hazardous duty pay. We're just calling it a stipend for all staff. And a large chunk of that, around 90-some thousand dollars, I believe, $92,000 of that came out of the Sparks dollars that we were able to get from the Harvey County through the federal government program. And we have to come up with about $17,000 out of our own funds in order to be able to give everyone that $150 shot in the arm that'll be on their Christmas paycheck, which we're really excited about being able to do that. With enrollment this year and with some enrollment concerns looking into next year, the raises we were able to give to teachers, because that was another thing that was approved last night. We ratified the teacher contracts. Those raises were very minimal. They were just what they call step and column in education speak. And they're on a salary schedule, and they'll move over if they've gotten education. They'll move down in terms of number of years. We weren't able to give much in terms of raises, and we've not yet applied those raises to other positions. So this is something that we could do. And it was actually one of our board members, Jennifer Buddy, that suggested this. And actually some other individuals during the course of the semester have suggested it as well. But thankful that the board really wanted us to try to make that push in that area with those dollars.
Okay. One other important thing that happened last night was we did have a board member resign. Can you just let us know a little bit of information about that and what people should do if they're interested in applying?
Yeah, Jennifer Buddy tendered a resignation at the end of the board meeting last night, which was accepted. They went through the process of amending the agenda and adopting the resolution that allows us to get that posted. Now, we had another board member resignation. It was in June before I got here, but I'm starting to think, man, do all the board members want to resign that I'm here? Or is it just COVID? I don't know. But the way that's going to work out essentially is if you have an interest in that, I need for you to reach out to Joni Jantz here in my office. There'll be essentially an application process where you have to answer a couple of questions. And those questions are, why would you want to be on the board? And why do you think what do you think you would bring to the board? And those applications will be due by the 1st of January. And what we will end up doing, we right now have currently scheduled a special board meeting for the 6th of January, where the board will consider those applications and they'll appoint a new member, which would take over on the 11th of January meeting. And that'll be a reorganizational meeting too, to where they'll vote on the president and vice president. So they really wanted to work to be able to have that person on board so that they can participate in that vote. So if you have that interest, please reach out to Joni. She can supply that information for you. Please make sure that you get that information to the office by the 1st of January. Of course, over the holidays, there'll be a lot of folks even in this office that are on vacation. And obviously January 1st, we won't be in session. On January 1st, the office will be closed. But if that stuff is all postmarked and we receive it, and you've emailed, the best thing to do would probably be to email it to Joni. Probably just reach out to her and she can give you the best advice on how to get that to her. So Jennifer had, in my short time, she has done a good job trying to represent the interest of the patrons and parents and students of our district, and we appreciate the service that she was able to render during that time.
Okay, and one other point they did make, if you applied last summer for the previous position, just let Joni know that you're still interested. You don't have to rewrite your essay or anything, I guess, unless you want to. But yeah, so if you're interested, just make sure you apply by January 1st. And just a reminder, if you do have any questions, I know it's kind of the end of the semester, so maybe people are just ready for a break, but just leave them in the comments section. One thing I heard about, I read that we maybe received more masks as a district. What information do you have on that?
Yeah, there's been a state program 2 times this year in which we've been able to ask for additional masks for every one of our students and staff. And so that's coming. It's a state program. It's run through our service centers. Our local service center is ESDEC in Hutchinson. And so we went ahead and requested an additional white mask for each one of our kids and family, or kids and staff. Not sure when those will be delivered, but when they are, we'll divvy them out to the buildings and they'll distribute as they need to. So that'll have been 4 masks then that your kid would have received from the district this year.
Oh, someone just wanted to leave a little note, and I thought it was nice. So they wanted to thank all the teachers for their work. She has grandkids and a high school student, and every day she has a new outlook on what they do for our kids. And she says a huge thank you to all of them at Slate Creek in the high school, which is just great. Thank you for sharing that. One other thing I read about in your weekly updates is that you went and joined the high school principals council. Could you just let us know what that is and what sort of things they talked about?
Mr. Smith, the high school principal, Caleb Smith, there's 2 Smiths up there, 2 principals. Caleb Smith has had a principals council since he started there. They meet regularly to talk about different issues that could impact the school. One of the things that in my previous district, I always had a superintendent's council in which did similar things where I got together with them a few times during the course of a year. And that was the purpose this past Friday, just to get to know the students a little bit, to ask them what kinds of things they think we could be doing to help support them. What kinds of challenges they're facing and how we can perhaps make their lives a little better. It was a great group of student leaders from different organizations from within the high school. It wasn't just student council, and they had some great suggestions. I'll say, and all of you know this, I'm sure, one of the overwhelming things is they want to be back in school. I asked them the question, essentially, if you'd have been told last year at this time that you'd probably be out of school, not physically on campus for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, how many of you would have been really happy? And obviously they all raised their hand. And then my next question was, how many of you want to be on campus? And they all raised their hand. They really do miss being at school for the socialization piece, and also just that school community. They really miss that affiliation. Athletic practices and stuff, I know those are going on, but even those are challenging at times. And you just don't have that same group of individuals that you would run into in the hallways. One of the things as a suggestion, and we've passed these suggestions off to all staff in my weekly notes, but one of the suggestions was just to have maybe like a 5-minute, whether it's working through a problem or working through an issue or talking about the homework or whatever at the beginning of class for the teachers in breakout rooms, which we can do now in Google Meet, because that gives them an opportunity to just kind of get together to talk to other people, because they're at home, they're isolated. And I know they've got access to social media and stuff, but there's no substitute for a face-to-face conversation. And since we can't do that in person, at least doing it electronically would help. And it would help them to meet other people too. So great suggestions by a great group of young people. I'm going to meet with another advisory group from the high school, which will have a different set of leaders. And I'll report back on that too. And that'll happen sometime in early January. It was a great time. I miss those. I miss being able just to go into a school. When I go to the high school now, there's great people up there, but they're all old people like me. So it's a lot more fun to see young people. Can't hear you, Sam. Are you mute?
I am. I think that was all the questions we had. So thank you everybody for watching. If we didn't get your question, if you think of one later, you can email it to info@usd373.org. And I guess we'll see everybody next year. Do you have anything you want to add, Mr. Van Rankin?
Just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday. I'll reinforce one more time. We really want everyone to take the measures we need to over the course of the holiday break to ensure that we can come back in at least that hybrid mode. Another thing that I want to emphasize, I'm not sure if you're aware, up at the high school, there is free COVID testing taking place in the high school parking lot. That is actually a function of a state program that the Harvey County Emergency Response is running. Gary Denny has done a great job of organizing that. If you have an interest in looking into that, I think you can go from their website. I should know the site off the top of my head, but there's actually a website that you can register where you could actually set up an appointment, a time to go through that drive-through area up in there and get COVID testing. And there's a 2 or 3 day turnaround time on the response. It is a saliva-based PCR test. So you have to spit into a tube, and I hear it's quite a bit you have to spit into. But please do that and take care of each other over the holiday and enjoy the time with friends. But remember to follow those practices of social distancing, masking, and practicing the hygiene. So have a great Christmas.
Yeah, it's gogettested.com, and it's really easy. You give them your cell phone, they text you everything you need. They can text you when your results get in. I just did it I'm going to try and just regularly test because I think that's important to figure out, who may be sick, especially since I do go to some different buildings. And yeah, it was really fast. I went on the very first day and there was maybe like a 10-minute wait. And then the last time I went, it was pull right up, and you can pick times and the times you'd show up, and you don't have to make an appointment, but they say it goes faster to do that. So it's been great to be able to just do your part to try to make sure everybody stays safe. But thank you so much, Mr. Van Rankin, for being here, and thank you everybody for watching. Have a great break.